Is this thing on? Hello, everyone. My name is Louis Harris. Welcome to Res, the podcast I made because I felt that I didn't do enough in the wake of the 2024 election season and believed that I did a better job of sharing the issues. And so I made this pod to address that void in the next 4 years. The purpose of the podcast is to share stories and narratives to create understanding and a pathway towards a unified society for all of us. And so I am joined by my latest guest, who is a good friend, somebody I respect, one of the few people I consider a mentor, especially in the years that I was promoting social justice. Would you please share your name with the audience? Yeah. It has a ring that you don't understand unless you're from Snohomish County. So good to see you, Ben. How do you identify yourself?
Black cis male.
Excellent. And what state and city do you live in?
Currently, I live in Concord, North Carolina. It's a little small. It's like the 6th or 7th largest city in the state of North Carolina, right outside of Charlotte.
Can you remind me, were they on the side or the blue side?
They're red.
They were red. Okay. You have a unique perspective as somebody who has helped promote equality, equity, inclusion, diversity, justice, all those things here in Washington State. And you moved over to North Carolina a few ago, which is a red state. So you do have a perspective valuable. I'm glad to have you on. Could you tell us what you do?
Yeah. Currently, I'm retired. I county government, but I've always been actively engaged in justice work.
And so what is a credential that you use most often to sell yourself on job applications, if you were?
That may be somewhat difficult for me because I think it would apply to where I was going. If I were going for jobs.
Let's go. That's where we need to go.
And if I were going to a job in the main job sector, I guess my stick-to-itiveness, my ability to go after with you, no matter what.
That's absolutely. Okay, we learned a little bit about you, Ben. We're going to get into the 2024 presidential election.
I voted for Kamala Harris, which was a no-brainer. I thought it was a no-brainer for the majority of the United States, but apparently it wasn't.
Right. We can get into that. I think the next question, which is, what are feelings you have about the results of the 2024 presidential election?
Dismayed, disappointed. I would just say dismayed and disappointed. I wouldn't try a third one because the third one would take a long, drawn-out explanation.
Brother, that's why I have you on. Talk to us.
In the words of Malcolm, it is the chickens coming home to roost, getting exactly what they asked. I'm not sure that this will play out the way they feel that it will play out. I think that folks are not understanding the economy works, and two, how a president works.
Right.
And I think that they're tied together, which they are not. And so that's why I'm so dismayed. Here you have a convicted felon. It's one of the biggest grifters in the world. And you're so caught up with the cult of personality, you would allow a person that has none of your interest at heart to go on and continue on as the president of the United States.
Right.
Is saying what you think about the country itself. If you in general, now that is not to say that you're so sold on the Democratic Party. They did a lot wrong, and they continue to do wrong because they're trying to get things normalized in the way that they were. They won't take a more radicalized approach. When I listen to folks talk about the Republican Party, which is another question, they will try and shift to the party of Lincoln, especially if we're talking to a bunch of Black people I have to remind them that Lincoln was not a radical Republican. During that period of time, there were radical Republicans, and they were the ones moving Lincoln forward. As soon as the Dixie Democrats got and the racists that were going on at that particular time, they removed all the radical Republicans. And so it no longer became the party of Lincoln. It became just another party. Now you have two parties that don't have much difference between the two of them. But the party that is in now, I keep saying the party, the cult of personality that is taken over is neither one of those parties. It's a different thing altogether. And then I'll get into the misogynistic, paternalistic hopes of the dominated male society that we live in. People say that it's not true. But I look at it and I'm saying, hey, maybe he was telling the truth when he said that he was going to protect women. Based upon the way that they voted, they felt that they needed it.
Right.
My last statement about it is that it is just white people being white people. They can't get out of their own way. White people being white people.
Right. And so when you say that, like, I know what you mean, because I've done the analysis, I've done the white culture and how they've operated over time. But for listeners, when you say that, what are you specifically honing in on?
I am talking about the misogynistic culture or nature of people, and though they say they don't.
Right.
One of I have learned in social is that one of the scariest things, quite often, one of the most scariest things, she says one thing, but because she says one thing, she supports what she's trying to say should not exist in different ways, because white women are not Karens.
Right, right.
I'm not saying that they are, but you can be so liberal that you get in the way of progress.
Right. I know exactly what you're talking about. A good example would be the keyboard warriors, right? There are people out there who will share the information, share the quote, show up to the rally, participate in the rally, but in the same rally will clutch their when a person of color comes by, or they will types of other cultures like Latino people or different types of Asian people. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Okay.
To say the number of people, as I understand it, that voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020 are the same number of people that voted for him on full.
Right.
If you got the same number, that means that the folks that are on the other side that purport to be on the other side did not vote or did not vote. And I'm looking and I'm wondering why. Wasn't when I went to I didn't see any harassment when they talked about it. That may have been something that was isolated. There was no fear of anyone that came in that line. Of course, I was only there for a set period of time. I can tell you that I voted in an area that was primarily red.
Okay.
There were more opportunities. The location I did early voting at the location that I was voting. It wasn't in the city of Concord. It was in a smaller town. There was nothing there that anyone should have feared. There was none of that. You can't sit down. You can't drink water. You can't bring in. We didn't have none of that. Didn't have none of that. Didn't see it and didn't hear of it in the entire county, because I live in Cabarrus County and Charlotte is in Mecklenburg.
And Charlotte, I'm assuming, is a blue county.
Charlotte, yes.
Okay.
Charlotte is a blue county. That is the largest population in the state. Largest city in the state. And there are...
So connecting You're white liberal women, and then you mentioned your voting experience in the red district. What's the connection point there?
No matter how much they tried to say that they wouldn't, they held their nose and voted for a man. You could have had Bobo the monkey as long as Bobo was saying that he was a male. They would have voted for him. That's how I feel. It had to be a male, period.
Right. I hear you there, because first of all, the podcast is not we're not focusing on perfection, focusing on progress. And we accept that people have different perspectives. That's like the ground rule here. It is helpful to understand your perspective, looking at the intersections of your identity about the next Trump presidency.
Individually, I don't fear anything. Individually. And the reason why is because I'm sick. I don't have to I'm not beholden to anyone. Unless he figures out a way to cut off all of my funding, and I don't think that 4 years will be enough time for him. What I fear is go back to the Frantz Fanon and the Wretched of the Earth. He was a French propagandist from Algeria that fought in the French. He was a trained psychiatrist, and for a period of time, he had a practice in Paris. And then he visited to go back to Algeria during the French Revolution. The Algerian Revolution. He read it. It talks about the folks that really, for lack of a better way of saying it, at the bottom of the well.
Sure.
And how they are to be treated. But it's the psychology that goes with it. It allows them to say, we can't do any better. This is the best we can do. And there are a few of us that can escape. You allow yourself to be put in that position. And I don't want you to shame blame. I say you allow yourself to be put in that position because psychologically you believe that you can't do any better, or the world will not allow you to do any better. It's the exact opposite. The world will allow you, and that's the world's fear. The wretched will rise up.
Right. You hit on an excellent point about psychology of the class of people that are separated by economy, white supremacy, or misogyny. We're talking about the oppressed and the mechanisms that oppressors use to keep people oppressed, which a lot of times is how you view yourself, how you view other people around you, your education, the money in your pocket. Yeah. The question is, for the people that you're talking about who voted for Trump or didn't show up to vote at all, really believing about themselves and this situation.
There's the other side of it, though, because you have a lot of white people that are a part of this wretched of the earth.
Sure.
And included in that. I'm talking more social and economic circumstances.
Yeah, yeah.
History just tells me the psychology of it is being normalized. What the Afrikaners, the South Africans do when they wanted to willingly apply apartheid, they studied the chattel slave system in the United States. They studied that, and that's how they applied it to the apartheid in South Africa.
So you're saying they took Jim Crow and made the South African,
not Jim Crow. We're not to Jim Crow.
Even before that.
Originally in the United States, or in the States, or this country, because it's some days it's called United, or even call them states. But what I saw, or what I read and hear, is that you had white people that came over here as indentured servants, and you had black people that came over here as indentured servants, slaves. But both of them were treated the same initially when they came over, because there was ownership. So what did they do? There were a couple of the rebellions, because initially there were white and black in the rebellions. The masters separated the classes. and said, even though you don't have nothing, you're better than him.
Right.
And it's that psychology that is still prevalent today in that in the white community. I see it more back in the South because I was born and raised in the South. I spent 31 years in Pacific Northwest. I was born and raised in the South. And as someone has had rocks being thrown at him trying to go into elementary school by white kids, I'm like, I've seen enough of it, and I lived through Jim Crow.
Right.
Even though I was born and raised lived in Virginia, I lived in South Carolina for short periods of time. And in North Carolina, when I get here in 70, 71, they still had the entrance for colored people eat in restaurants. Different entrance. And this is a restaurant.
And they were still using them.
Yeah. And
right.
So I've seen that, but I also have seen how the liberal elite has come and made a distinction, saying they're trying to do one side but not the other. Because I just want to call it the palm bubble. Bubble, using the male term rather than non-objective. But still thinks that he has an advantage, even to this day. And you don't have to leave the state of Washington. Go to Whatcom County. Virtually any county outside King and Snohomish County. You can see it. Here, where they're blatant, more undercover in the Pacific Northwest.
I hear you. So part of what you're saying is that the people who didn't show up, the people who may be the liberal that either didn't voted in a different direction or voted for Trump, they are manifesting that age-old tactic of those in power to conquer and divide people using logical hierarchy, economic in many ways. It's economic in that a poor white person and a poor black person, the poor white person is seen as more valuable, right? But it's not like money in your pocket, which is why you get a lot of white people throughout the DEI movement saying, I don't have any privilege. I've not benefited from my skin color in society. Part of their response is not how this hierarchy in this country specifically created that distinction between them and people of color that gave them privilege and did not give privilege to Black folks, right? So thank you for bringing that historical reality to the conversation, because there are a lot of reasons why, hopefully in this podcast, we will illuminate many of those. We're just trying to sift through what happened and try to figure out a pathway forward. The next question I have is, what do you hope most about the next Trump presidency?
What do I see as a hope? We'll have reality set in.
Right.
I thought that after his first presidency, reality would set in. His team, greatest propaganda going. The only reason that he ran for president the second or third time was to try and get out of jail. Now he's done it. He's not going to jail. He's not going to be convicted of any crimes in the end. In Georgia, all the people around him that are going to jail as a result of being associated with him, but he's not going to jail.
Right.
So what I hope is that people and see that, yes, we may be talking about immigrants today, but I want to make sure that everyone understands, other than Native Americans, everyone here in the United States is an immigrant.
Right. Right.
And so they may be going after a select few. It is you next. You're next.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. And the point there is also that it starts somewhere, right? It always starts somewhere. It always seems widely beneficial to the majority, but then it starts to continue along that trend. Namely, like the Nazis, right? It started somewhere, and by the end of the war, we know what happened to us, right? So it's like, I hear what you're saying. Justice would save the day, him for being in office, but we're talking about systems set up to preserve a certain way of life, and justice is oftentimes a mask for oppression or justified white supremacy or hierarchy, right?